This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show and our Moonlighters. That's right, I said Moonlighters. Two guys are coming on the show, and they are the greatest high school home run hitters in not only the state of Iowa's history, but the United States history, and their names are Jeff Clement and James Peterson. Now, most Iowans probably remember this story because 19 summers ago, in the summer of 2002, James Peterson and Jeff Clement made national news in their home run chase to break the national high school home run record, which at that time was held by Drew Henson. And both of these guys broke the record. Clement has the record today with 75 career high school home runs. James Peterson is in second place with 73, and they both did it in the same season from the same state of Iowa. Now, for this episode of the podcast, this is a story that I've wanted to tell for a long time, but the impetus for this happened on the Murph and Andy show in Des Moines. They had brought up the James Peterson and Jeff Clement home run chase, and they said, our friend Moonlight Graham needs to do this episode. And I thought, you know what? It's been too long. I need to get this story here on the podcast. And so I don't know Jeff or James much at all. You know, I've had the chance to talk to him at this point, but you know how it is in Iowa. You're always kind of one connection away from anybody. And so I knew our trusted co-host, Tom Griffin, knew James Peterson a little bit. So Tom was able to connect me with James Peterson. James Peterson right away said, yep, he'd love to do the podcast. James still had Jeff Clement's cell phone number in his phone, and that's how we were able to get Jeff Clement on the pod as well. Both of those guys came over to the Moonlight Graham Show studio. We talked baseball for a little over an hour. It was a ton of fun. And what was really fun is these guys hadn't seen each other in a lot of years, and they hadn't sat down to talk about, you know, that high school season 19 years ago in a really long time. And you could tell that both of them really had a lot of fun talking about high school sports, talking about their home run chase, and talking about each other because they're both also big fans of each other. And of course, after high school, both of these guys went on to play college ball as well. Both of them had really good college careers. Jeff went on to play at USC. James went on to play at Indian Hills Community College before both of them got drafted, signed professional contracts. James played in the Los Angeles Dodgers organization. Jeff was a highly drafted guy by the Seattle Mariners. Jeff ended up making the major leagues. He bounced around a little bit from the Mariners to the Pirates to the Twins and had a nice major league career as well. So this one was a lot of fun to talk, you know, early 2000s Iowa high school baseball, and also, you know, what happened to these guys after their high school baseball careers as well. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this podcast. I know I enjoyed recording it with these two great baseball players. And if you like what we're doing here on the Moonlight Graham Show, make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever it is that you get your podcasts. And we would love it if you left us a 5-star review. You can also follow the show on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. So enjoy today's episode with Moonlighters, Jeff Clement and James Peterson. So I'm back in the Moonlight Graham Show studio. I am sitting with the two greatest home run hitters in national high school history. James Peterson to my left, Jeff Clement right in front of me. Fellas, thank you for coming on the Moonlight Graham Show.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So, you know, right away, guys, you guys made history back in 2002, right? That summer of 2002, you guys both break the national home run record, with an asterisk on Peterson's side. But when was the last time you guys were together?
2 years ago.
So this is James. I guess we should introduce you. This is James speaking right now. So 2 years ago? Yeah. And where was that at, James?
Baseball field with our kids, our sons.
Okay, so you were playing at a little kids tournament then?
Yeah, it was a county over on the east side. And so our kid, I don't know, what was it, like 7U, I want to say? Yeah, like coach pitched and just ran into each other in the outfield watching our kids play.
Dude, who recognized who first?
I think Jeff I think he hollered at me. Yeah, I can't remember though.
I don't remember the big beard in high school, but I do. I looked at it. I think I had a double take. I'm like, I think that's James there. And so, it was a fun ball game, reminiscing some of the memories. That's for sure.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, Peterson. He's the first ever Moonlighter, the first ever guy I've had on this podcast to pull up to my house with a Harley Davidson. So it's 100th anniversary Harley Davidson. The guy pulls up and I'm like, is this Wild Thing coming in, to studio right here?
That used to be my nickname in Little League, actually. So.
Was Wild Thing.
Yeah.
So James, before we started recording here, we're talking about old man baseball, right? Because you and we both play in the same wooden bat league. Jeff, is there ever any hope for you to put the spikes back on and play an old man baseball league?
Oh, man, I would love to play. I'm probably too competitive, and I would definitely hurt myself. So there's probably not much hope. There's been a few people. I think James is the last one that put the sell on me to join it, but it probably wouldn't go great for me, and I'm probably, I'd end up hurting myself and end up in the ER somewhere. So and I've got 5 kids at this point. So if I took the time to do that, I don't know if I'd be happily married anymore.
What injury are you most afraid of at this point?
Well, my last couple years playing, my left knee was not great. I had 3 knee surgeries, a couple elbow surgeries, and pretty sure I'm arthritic at age 37 already. So, but you name it, shoulder, pretty much every joint aches when I wake up in the morning.
But Peterson, you're still hitting 500. You're still hitting 500 in the Wood Bat League. So, you dealt with a bunch of injuries too. What keeps you playing in the Old Man's Wood Bat League?
Energy drinks and Excedrin. So, that's my pregame now. So
we have faced each other.
I don't remember. You mentioned something about it. Yeah,
we have faced each other. You're 0 for 1 off me. So you popped up to right field on me. And I remember when I'm playing in this Old Man's League, it was my first appearance in the league. This is a couple of years ago. And so I'm showing up an hour early. I'm getting all of my warm-ups in or whatever. And then I'm pitching, and I was like, oh, is that James Peterson, right? I'd never met you before, and I'd never seen you play at this point because I was in high school same time you guys were in high school. So it's not like I can, go up and watch you guys play while I'm still playing too. And I was like, I wonder if I'll figure out which guy Peterson is. And I saw you in the on-deck circle take one swing, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's James Peterson right there, because everybody else in that league, there's some pretty good players, but there's only one guy that has the Iowa high school home run record, right? So you don't remember that?
I don't know. And if it was 2 years ago, it doesn't count.
I was probably the only guy that's gotten you out in the last 3 years.
So you're like Greg Maddux. You're like, I'm just going to take a little bit off this 2-seamer. I'm going to make him fly out 345 in the gap here.
Well, the fields we play on, there's no 345. Everything is 300-foot fences. I don't have any 2-seamer anymore. So it's all 4-seam fastballs. And only against a guy like James Peterson do I throw a curveball. That's kind of the scouting report on me in this Old Man's League. But enough about me. We're here to talk about you guys. So let's go back to 2002. But before we get there, just to set the stage, I'm looking up your guys' high school stats today, and it's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. So here are the stats. Correct me if I'm wrong, and you guys got to help me fill in some of the gaps here. I'm sure you guys pour over your high school stats on a regular basis. So, James, you played in 8th grade, which became controversial, as we'll talk about later. But in 8th grade for Winterset, you hit .525 with 5 home runs. Freshman year, you hit .582. Not sure how many home runs you hit. Sophomore year, you hit .542 with 28 home runs, state record. Junior year, you hit .558. Not sure how many home runs you hit that year either. And then your senior year, you have an off year. You hit .477 with 15 home runs for a career .539 batting average with 73 home runs. That's unbelievable to say out loud, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, if I could add in, I'm pretty sure he probably didn't see a lot of pitches that last year. I wouldn't call it an off year. I'd say he probably didn't see much.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're I think 3rd all time in single season walks as well. There's one guy, I think Derek Manrique, actually from Sioux City North, is 2nd Moonlighter, and Clement is 1st in single season walks. You had 72 walks in 2002. So Clement's stats, not sure your batting average your freshman year, but you hit 21 home runs. 2000, your sophomore year, 548, 21 home runs. This isn't like 35 games in Iowa high school baseball. Junior year, 547, 17 home runs. And then your senior year, 551 with 16 home runs. I mean, I know you guys lived it, right? But I think I hit 450 my like senior year, and I thought I was God's gift to baseball. You guys, neither one of you ever hit 450 in your worst year. What was that like to have a high school career where 52% of the time you're getting a base hit?
Well, great. I mean, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to do. But you know, the stats. I'm sure Jeff's the same way. That junior and senior year, you know, people know who you are, and you know, I mean, you might go 2 games without really seeing a good pitch. You know, so then you start chasing stuff if they do pitch to you. You know, and I mean, it's really frustrating and hard to kind of get a rhythm going. You know, when that's happening to you. You know, every other game or 2 games in a row, you know.
Yeah, because the book was out on you guys early. Like, I mean, seriously. I mean, your freshman year, Jeff, you hit 21 home runs. James, I'm not sure how many home runs you hit, probably 10 or so. And you hit 582. So by the time you guys are 16 years old, you're not seeing a whole lot of good pitching, Jeff.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because that was right during the time period on the heels of McGwire, Sosa, and then obviously Bonds and what he did. And I look back at that era and think about watching big league games and watching what Barry Bonds did at the highest level, where he would see like a pitch or two a game, and he managed to hit them 500 feet. I mean, it was remarkable. We were facing guys throwing 75, 80 mile an hour, but. Right. I watched that now. I mean, I think he may have had some more enhancements than what either one of us did, but still, you got to hit it 500 feet. So, I mean, it's just interesting thinking about that era of baseball and just what it did to the state. It's pretty cool to look back on, and actually, I mean, we both have kids now, and they ask a lot of questions. So it's pretty cool to relive some of that with them.
That was a really big deal. Like you had mentioned, coming off the McGwire Sosa home run chase in the late 90s. Then Iowa has its own, you know, Peterson Clement home run chase in 2002. And so people were into this, right? They were into this home run chase. How often, as you guys are in your regular lives now, as guys in your late 30s, your baseball career, with the exception of old man wood bat baseball, is in the rear view mirror, how often are you guys drinking a beer or, you know, pumping gas and somebody comes up to you with some story from 20 years ago about playing high school baseball?
For me, not very often.
It's because of that beard.
That must be the beard. Yeah. I mean, and, you know, I don't really live around where I used to, that kind of thing. So, yeah, and I mean, I don't look like a baseball player probably anymore, you know. So I
think you still look like a ball player. I mean, if that's not what a baseball player looks like, I don't know what does.
Especially rolling up in the Harley. No, I would agree with James. I don't get it much at all. I mean, we're talking close to 20 years ago. I mean, it's crazy how long ago that was. And so maybe in certain circles with people that would know, but as far as pumping gas or anything like that, like never. It doesn't ever happen. I think, you know, the piece that Andy Fales did on James kind of rekindled it, to be honest with you. And I think it's pretty cool to see it brings back a lot of good memories for a lot of people. So I think that's the neatest part of the whole thing. Before
we get too much into that season, just thought about this. One of the reasons why it was such a big deal was because Iowa plays high school summer baseball. Most states are playing in the spring. And so at that time, you know, it was a fun, not only statewide story, because it was the only game in town that's outside of Major League Baseball, but also it was a fun national story because Iowa high school baseball was the only high school sport going on nationally. And I think that probably really played into that. So in hindsight, guys, what do you guys think about Iowa continuing to play summer baseball?
I think it's great. Yeah. I mean, I would. When else would you play it? You know,
right? Well, I mean, it's 72 degrees today in early March.
That's
but
true.
What do you think, Jeff?
I personally loved it. It felt like you were in the big leagues already. I mean, you go play your games. We'd always hit the Taco John's, the local Taco John's after the game. It was like the max from Saved by the Bell for us.
Right.
And you know what? Stay up late and then maybe play some RBI baseball on the Nintendo and wake up at like 11 o'clock the next morning, show up to the park at 1, 2 o'clock, and do it all over again. I loved it.
You're describing like a minor league lifestyle as a Marshalltown 16-year-old.
Yeah, I don't. It was probably more glamorous than a minor league lifestyle. I know James could probably touch on that too. That's about as rough as it gets. Some of those bus trips and the peanut butter and jelly and things of that nature.
Yeah. Well, neither of you guys played in the Frontier League, so let me tell you, the Frontier League was probably worse than anything you guys had. But okay, so let's go back to 2002, though. You guys coming into 2002. I believe I have this right. James, you enter your senior year with 58 home runs. Jeff, you enter that season with 59 home runs. Do I have that right? Is that how you guys remember it, or is it, that not something you've thought about in a while?
Right, yeah, I think
so Jeff was up 1 coming into the year. At that time, both of you guys had already broken the Iowa State home run record. Were these records on your radar at that point? Like, this is kind of before the internet was on our phones and everywhere. Were these records like the Iowa State home run record, which you both had passed the previous year, and now the next step is Drew Henson at 70 home runs with the national record? Were these things that were on your radar?
I would say so. Yeah, on mine personally. I don't know if anybody else, like the single season home run record, I always thought it was 29 actually by Nelson. And so that last game I hit 2 in it, and it was 28, and I was like, gosh, and we didn't go to state that year or anything. And so I was like, gosh, I was 1 off from that, and then come to find out Brad only had 27.
27,
yeah.
Right. And so, Jeff, was that on your radar, those records?
I think the 70 I was aware of because of who Drew Henson was. I mean, he signed for a lot of money with the Yankees. He was a great football player at Michigan. Obviously ended up going back, I think, after that fact to the Cowboys. And so maybe that put it on the radar a little bit more. I wasn't aware of what the Iowa record was. I knew Brad had hit, was it 27 the 2 years before that, because the state tournament was in Marshalltown. So I got to watch him play, and I think he hit a low line drive to left center that cleared the fence by about 50 feet. It's probably still going right now. So I guess that was on the radar too, because I was like, holy cow, this guy can really hit. But I don't know that it was ever really the focus. I knew that it was within range, but I think for me personally, I was able to put up more numbers because it was always winning a state title, and typically I'd perform better when I wasn't trying to hit homers or think about myself.
Did you guys know about each other?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We played together perfect game stuff in the spring and fall. We were on the same team together one of those years, I remember, and then we played against each other. So definitely knew who James was. And
did you know that you guys were similar in the home run race? Like coming into that year, did you know Clement's got 59 and I got 58, and I'm 1 behind?
I can't remember where I got aware of that at all. If it was like halfway through the season or something.
You're acting like this is 20 years ago. Exactly. Come on, man.
I know.
I'm with James. I don't know going into that year whether I had any idea, but my goodness, like partway through the year, it was like front page news every day. And that's when and back then you actually bought a newspaper to see it. So it was, we're dating ourselves by saying that, but I remember my brother reading the paper and it being in there like every single morning, especially as the summer got later. And it was like, they kept running track of it in all the papers at that point.
Yeah, the interesting thing, too, is I mentioned an asterisk earlier, and that's because the National Federation of High School Sports does not count the 5 home runs James hit prior to entering high school, which is kind of incredible in its own right? So on the national record, it has you with 73 home runs.
68.
Or 68 home runs, minus the 5 that you hit. The Iowa record book has you at 73. Did that tick you off a little bit?
I mean, a little bit. I get it, though. What if Jeff played as an 8th grader, too?
Well, give him the stats then.
Well, I wasn't good enough. My brother was the catcher on the varsity team that year.
I
couldn't beat him out. That's
he was
right.
a backup.
Okay. No, I would say you double his home run total as an 8th grader. If you're 8th grade hitting homers off seniors, that's saying something.
The thought of hitting a home run as an 8th grader is just so ridiculous to like 95% of high school athletes. I mean, especially at a 3A school. Like
I did that with Martinsdale.
Oh my God!
So yeah,
then you got recruited over.
It's probably a little more like you can believe it now because it's a smaller school, you know.
Yeah, it's good. A lot of good baseball. And Martinsdale's traditionally plays a lot of 4A schools around the area.
Yeah,
Des Moines
so they
East.
had, I think, 11 or 12 seniors on that team that year. So I actually DH'd for a senior, which, you know.
I'm sure he took that real well.
He was a really nice kid, and yeah, he actually did. So, yeah, I mean, in Southeast Warren was always like the rival, and they had, I think it was Waylon Byers, is that right?
I have no idea.
He went to Nebraska, and then he kicked around, I think, with the Cardinals. I mean, just threw gas, you know. So
interesting. So let's go back to that season. I want to talk, put you guys in the mindset. James, you're playing for Winterset. Jeff, you're playing for Marshalltown. What's your at-bat routine when you're stepping to the plate as a senior in high school? Did you have a walk-up? This is probably pre-walk-up songs, right? There was no walk-up songs. It's what was in your head as you're stepping into the box back in 2002?
For me, it was definitely there were no walkout songs at that point or walk-up songs. That was way before that.
Right.
I remember my routine was I'd always obviously time the pitcher up and basically swing as hard as I could. So when I went up to the plate and swung hard, that I was ready to do it. But I don't remember anything specifically. I mean, it was always a focus on getting a good pitch to hit. I mean, that doesn't matter if I'm working with my kids at the 10U, 12U level or, working in the big leagues. You got to get a good pitch to hit. So that was the focus and being on time. But other than that, I mean, the home run thing, if I ever tried to hit them, I'd jam myself and pop up. So that never worked for me. It was just get a good pitch to hit and hit it hard.
Probably the same thing. Like he said, just, I mean, in junior, senior year, I just remember I wasn't looking for a good pitch. I was looking for something close. I mean, it just, I just hated walking. I hated walking. I'd rather almost ground. I decided to say, but I almost want to. It's selfish,
right.
But I just wanted to hit. That's what I like to do. So yeah, I mean, I probably telling myself, wait for a good pitch. Don't strike out.
Yeah.
Don't strike out on a bad pitch.
Who was the toughest pitcher in that era? Do you guys remember facing any really good pitchers from high school? Because neither of you guys won the state tournament, right? You guys, Jeff, you lost in the state finals, didn't you?
Hold on now.
Or did you win it? No,
I think you guys won it.
We won it my senior year.
Yeah.
We got second my sophomore and junior year. We won't elaborate on those. But
who beat you your sophomore and junior year?
So it was Urbandale in extra innings. My sophomore year, I was actually on the mound, gave up the game-winning hit, and then junior year, Dowling smoked us. That's when they had all those
Matt
D1
McCree.
guys. Oh yeah. They had a really good team that year, and then we beat Kennedy my senior year. Actually, I pitched that one and gave up a 6 spot in 1 inning, and
still won it.
We won it 9-6. Yep.
God, I got to get my facts straight here. So, you faced some good pitching. Did you face McCree, or who was the best arm you guys faced during that run?
I think perfect game. We probably saw the best arms more frequently. I remember facing Jake Hansen.
Oh yeah,
yep.
You and I lefty.
Yep, exactly. And but we faced him once, right? I mean, he wasn't in the CIML or anything
was
like that.
Was he Eastern Iowa, Dubuque guy?
No, he is Western Iowa, Lewis Central.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Bluffs.
And they had a great team. Yeah, I think they were number 1 and we were 2 going into the state tournament maybe my senior year. And so he threw really hard. And from the left side, you didn't see that very much. But high school-wise, I don't remember any arms where I was like, oh man, that guy's can really bring it, or he's got a nasty slider or anything like that. I don't know if James could speak differently on that.
Yeah, I mean, perfect game. Everybody kind of threw. You knew what to expect. They were going to be throwing upper 80s, low 90s, that kind of thing. And then as far as Winterset goes, the kid from Dallas Center Grimes, I think was still Watson.
Tony Watson, yeah.
So he was in.
He gave up one run his senior year on a little dink. We had him on the pod. He still hasn't gotten over it yet.
Yeah.
So did you face Watson then in high school?
Yeah, they were in our. We played them all the time. Yeah.
So lefty. You had Jake Hansen as the lefty. You had Watson. Did you get a hit off Watson?
I probably had a couple. Yeah.
Oh.
I don't think I hit a home run off him. So. I know he struck me out. I remember that. So, yeah.
Yeah, he was really good. So when you look back on it now, and I'm sure it's all, a little hazy. It was 20 years ago, but what was the park that you like to hit in the most? When we're talking Iowa high school games, and maybe it's Marshalltown. You guys played in a good park. A lot of state tournaments held in Marshalltown, Jeff, or you guys played at Carroll, which is another great park. But what was the park that either you hit a bunch of home runs in or you like to hit in the best?
Creston for me.
Ooh.
I don't know why.
Short porch and right?
No, I mean, standard baseball field. It's just we always had, our semis down there, and it just seemed to always click for me down there. So.
Nice. What about you, Jeff?
Probably Ames and Ankeny because they were short porches.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it seems like fields are way more often have a short right field than a short left field, right?
I don't know about that.
As a pitcher, as a right-handed hitter and a pitcher, like there's a reason I only had one high school home run. It was because all these parks were so deep and left, but so short and right, guys.
The wind, that's what I always joke with my high school coach about, like the south wind coming straight in from right field. It's very, very difficult to hit one out there.
So that season, you guys both mentioned it. You got a lot of pressure on you throughout that year. You're not seeing a lot of pitches, but you have this national home run record that's out there. Jeff, you got to hit 12 home runs to break it. James, you got to hit 13 home runs to break it. Throughout that season, how much is that number in the back of your head each and every game?
Probably not. I mean, it wasn't, the main focus of that season, it's like every year, like we were almost to state, then, we went to state. So it's kind of like a progression thing for me. And, it's like Jeff said, it's like getting to state and winning it, but it just, that never got that far,
Sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that there was actually quite a bit of media coverage for both of us. So you noticed that, and the crowds were always great. I'm sure same deal for Winterset. So that was a blast to play in that atmosphere. But we had a great team. I think I know we went 37-6 that year, and that was definitely the focus for me. And like I said, I think you excel personally when you're playing for something bigger than yourself. And we had such a great team and good group of guys that the focus was on playing hard and playing to win.
But did you ever get tired of the attention? Right? Because those are some long summer days, especially in Iowa. It's 100 degrees. You're playing doubleheaders 4 nights in a row, and you got reporters there kind of asking you the same questions every night. And you're getting all the focus instead of your teammates in a lot of situations, which is kind of awkward, especially for a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid. And, I got to imagine you just would get tired of that, right? Or was it just like you're soaking it in?
It wasn't great. I don't think it was crazy attention, It was just kind of a couple questions after the game, that kind of thing. I didn't mind it, and I didn't think it was that big a deal. But, I mean, I tend to not care a lot anyway, so...
Well, who broke the record first? Do you guys remember? I couldn't find this as I was digging through it.
I'm guessing probably Jeff, I would think. It seemed like I was always behind him. I think maybe at one point we were tied up, but and that might have been that 73 or something like that.
Yeah, I think we were tied at 73.
Well, you definitely were tied at 73.
Right. Yep.
So you must have made a comeback then, James.
Yeah,
I think I was
so.
always behind until I tied it at 73. Yeah.
What happened when you broke the record? Were you all of a sudden getting calls from more than the Des Moines Register? Was Sports Illustrated ringing you up? And was it a big deal, or was it just another night at the ballpark and you might have kept the ball and went to Taco John's with your buddies and no different? Or what's that like when you break a national home run record?
I think there's a lot of attention, but like you were saying, it's not the New York media, right? It's a bunch of people from Iowa that are pulling for you, and so there was never a feeling of a lot of pressure or stress as a result. So I think I tied it, and it was Lincoln at home, and then I broke it at Mason City. But I remember being tied at 73 because we were both going into our first state tournament game, but. I'm kind of like James. I didn't focus on it much. I never liked reading the articles because I always felt like my quotes were garbage. And I didn't like the way it was quoted. So I learned at an early age not to read it. And I think that served me well.
Because you were tied at 73 coming into, the state tournament. You guys are both in the state tournament your senior year. James, but you weren't able to watch each other, which was interesting because at that time, 1A and 3A were in Carroll. 2A and 4A were in Marshalltown. So Jeff's playing in Marshalltown. James is playing in Carroll. You're both at 73. James, you get beat in the first round without hitting any home runs.
Yeah, correct.
What was that last game like?
I remember a curveball that I took, and I remember that should have been the one that I swung at. It was like one of those deals. I mean, you're at the state tournament, and you're like Jeff said, you're looking for a good pitch, and usually it's fastball. And I just remember there was that curveball that just floating in there, and I was gonna pull the trigger, and I just talked myself out. You're talking split. Saying it now, it's taken a while to tell, but in my mind, I remember it was, split decisions. I saw it floating in there, and I just talked myself out of it, and it was like, gosh, I should have hit that one, So, yeah, I mean, that's about the only one I really
Who were you playing?
Centerville.
Okay.
Terry Beavers, I think, was on the mound for him.
I love that. Terry Beavers.
Yeah,
he
like
didn't have a
that.
great curveball, but, he got outs. He got outs. So, Jeff, you guys play the first round. You're tied at 73 home runs. You have a little bit different outcome. You hit 2 bombs in that first round to get to 75. Who is that against?
I think Burlington. I'm going to be honest. I don't really remember.
Oh, it was Bettendorf.
It was Bettendorf?
I
Okay,
looked this up today. It was Bettendorf.
Well, I remember. I knew it started with a B, somewhere on the east side of the state. No, I remember hearing that their coach, and I don't remember who even told me, but that they were like, "Oh no, we're not pitching around him." And so I was like, "Oh, that's great. I'm gonna get some pitches to hit."
Right.
So I went up there ready, and I think hit one my first at bat, and then I don't remember. I know I hit one to left center, one of the other at bats, and we beat them. We put up quite a few. We beat them, but obviously the goal was to win a state championship. So maybe that's why it wasn't a focus at the time, because I knew we had another game coming, and then hopefully another game after that. So, yeah, it's crazy the things you think you'll never forget, and I can't even remember who the opponent was.
Right. So, James, you see that Jeff hits 2 home runs. You see your high school career is over, right? There's nothing more you can do about it. You were chasing him all year. You had finally tied him up. He hits 2 home runs. What's your attitude that night?
I mean, I'm still, there's what I did and stuff like that, and got, I'm still happy with how it came out.
Yeah. You still hit 73 home runs.
I can't say, it's okay that he beat me, because it's not, and Jeff's the same way. I mean, we're so competitive that, I wanted to win, and, everybody wants to win, but, I mean, it's just, that's what happened, and it wouldn't have mattered anyways, because of the 5, I would have had to hit 8 to win it.
Right, yeah, the national record.
Yeah, so, I mean, I was already way behind in the grander scheme.
I didn't
of
even
things.
realize they didn't count those until I think the last story that they did on you recently. So I always look at it as 73 for
Right.
him, and I mean, whatever at that point, it's a lot of home runs.
It's a lot of home runs. I mean, it's like a comical amount of home runs. If you really think about it in a high school career with the amount of games we play, that's like 73 home runs in probably 120 games, essentially. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So we brought up Brad Nelson a couple of times. So Nelson hit 27 home runs, I think his junior or
I think it was his sophomore year.
sophomore
Yep.
year. And he did not play his senior year. He went and played Wood Bat League outside of the state. I think perfect game for most of the year, and then he got
I
drafted.
played with him. We went. So I was playing high school, and Brad opted out of it, and we went and played for, I think it was the Kansas City Monarchs on the weekends. So I would play a high school game my senior year, or no, it'd be my junior year and his senior, and then on the weekends I'd hop in the car and we'd head down to Kansas City and play in tournaments.
So if Nelson plays his senior year,
Oh.
does Nelson hit 28 home runs, or I think he's at 40? He would have had to hit 27 or 28 to get to where you guys at. Do you think Nelson would have done that? I don't think he would have got pitched to enough.
He could do it. I'm just saying, it seemed like, after your sophomore year, you're done. That's it.
You're seeing like one floating curveball a game that you could possibly hit.
Yeah, and Jeff's numbers show it, mine show it, and Nelson's would have been the same way, I think, his senior year. Probably even worse.
When you look back, you guys were 2 of the best hitters the state of Iowa's ever seen. Brad Nelson is in that conversation as well. Who are the best high school baseball players you've seen? And I'm sure you guys have watched a ton of Iowa high school baseball. Who are the best guys that come to mind for you guys?
Well, I know a little bit younger than us was Hellickson, and he, I think he was a freshman when we were seniors, and we were supposed to play them in a doubleheader, and I don't remember how it went down. They didn't show up. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I know because we had the same agent professionally for the first few years, and I remember talking with him, and he's like, man, I wanted to pitch against you, and something happened there, but obviously he had a heck of a career, and I remember a really, really good breaking ball and then a riding fastball. And so I remember hearing about him a lot, and then got to know, Joel Hanrahan would be another name from that era. Obviously, all the Dowling guys that we discussed. The list really goes on and on from that era. I think there are a lot of really good players, and it was fun to be around during those years.
Yeah, and I mean, to add to that list, I mean, I remember Dagus from Harlan. I mean, that guy,
man.
He was good. And then Werdekemper. I mean,
Storm Lake St. Mary's.
Yeah, he had some crazy spin on the ball. I remember that, facing him.
Yeah, he had a Bugs Bunny changeup, I remember.
Yeah, it was something about the way he threw. I mean, it was just different than anybody else, So, I mean, I just think that year, and maybe it's just, I don't think you'll ever have that much talent in those years. I don't know. Maybe you will. I don't know. But it just seems like everybody that played perfect game that year had gotten drafted, it seemed like, or played some sort of higher level baseball after that. For sure.
Yeah, Zach Dagus was like the great Bambino in the batter's box. Like, that guy was so intimidating. I faced him a bunch in the Northwoods League, and I still have nightmares about Zach Dagus.
His older brother was a really good player too.
Matt Dagus. Matt Dagus has more high school records. If you look through the Iowa high school record book, Matt Dagus is in there a lot more than Zach Dagus, which is interesting. A lot of studs coming out of Harlan. They're corn-fed farm boys down in that area. So after high school, I'm sure you guys, not only reporters, we're talking about this, but you guys played a lot of perfect game ball. You guys had scouts on you, I'm sure. Jeff, you end up going to USC. What was that process like for figuring out, like, I'm going a long way from home to play baseball?
Yeah, it was funny because it was during 9/11, so we were being recruited, and the rules were different back then. So they couldn't contact you. You took your visits your junior year, and so I went there. Arizona State, Nebraska, and Alabama were the four, and I was going to go to Arizona, but they signed Nick Hundley before I went on my visit there. So I had good grades in high school. Took the visit. Knew that it was a piece of paper that you get leaving there that was probably worth more than the public schools, and so really liked Mike Gillespie was the head coach then, just passed away actually last year. Love that man, and so I signed there, and honestly, with the hopes of playing professionally. I think James would agree with that. That was the dream for both of us, was to play in the big leagues, and so got drafted by the Twins that summer. I was told I would go in the first round. Like, I think they say, 4 times as many people are told they're going in the first round than actually do, and I was one of those. So I slipped. I remember getting a call from a scout early. I don't remember if it was the 3rd or 4th round. It was the Royals scout. He said, "Would you sign?" I said, I'd consider it strongly, and that wasn't good enough for him. So they passed on me. Went to the Twins. They did not make a real strong run at me. I was really disappointed. I wanted to sign, and just didn't work out. And then in hindsight, it worked out great.
Yeah, because this is right after Mauer, too. So they're drafting another left-handed catcher right after Mauer, which was interesting.
Yeah. Like I said, I think it worked out for the better that I didn't sign with them.
Well, it's funny. I think McCree got drafted by the Twins as well. And so the Twins scout in Iowa must have had some leeway back in the day. I don't know if it was Larry Corrigan or who, but, they had some.
I think it was Mark Wilson was the guy.
Okay, Mark Wilson. Yep. Cool. What about you, James? So I know you ended up going to Indian Hills, but at one point you were signed with Wichita State. What do you remember about, kind of that recruiting process?
I didn't get drafted out of high school, which was, it was.
You had to have scouts
too.
talking to you, right?
Yep. I filled out. Yeah, the Royals were always down. They take you to workouts. You fill out the paperwork. I mean, it just something you thought was going to happen anyways, and it didn't. And so, after that, I was going to go to Wichita, and play
the legendary Gene Stevenson.
Yeah, and so I went down to visit. I was really close with the Blakes down in Indianola. My dad worked there, so, that conversation took place, and then, they came down to see Casey and talk to the Blake family. But then Cam Walker showed up at my school one day, and he pulled me out of class, which was great. You know, 'Cause I mean, I still got good grades in school. I had, you know, grades to go anywhere, but you know, for me to get out of class, that's awesome. So, you know, and
he's like, Indian Hills, you're not going to go to class as much.
yeah, pretty much. No,
Was that this pitch?
no, that wasn't his pitch. I mean,
But he's like, JUCO, wink, wink. You know,
so
it's a little easier.
the conversation went, you know, if you go to Wichita, you got to wait 3 years till you get drafted again. Where you go to JUCO, as soon as you step foot on that campus, you can sign as a free agent, you know, or you have eligibility every single year out of a JUCO. So, you know, that was my goal, was to get drafted. It didn't happen, so I thought, well, this will be the quickest way to get there where I want to be.
How was that first year of JUCO for you?
I had really good stats, yeah. And, you know, what's weird is, like, I didn't talk to as many scouts as I did when I was in high school. So I didn't even know if I was going to get drafted that year either. And then before we went out to Colorado, you know, we had like a semifinal thing to go out to the World Series or whatever. And I mean, I just went on a tear for that. So I think a cross-checker from the Dodgers saw that and, yeah, went in the 16th.
Did you know the Dodgers were hot on you? Like you knew the cross-checker was out there, but did he say anything like, hey, if you're available in this round at this price, we'd love you?
So it was Mitch Webster was kind of the area guy for the Dodgers. And I knew he was at a few games or whatever, but never really talked to him. And then all of a sudden the cross-checker was, you know, real hot and heavy on me. So
Nice.
that's kind of what happened.
So, Jeff, you have a different college experience. You're looking to play pro ball. You wanted to as well. But when you go to USC, like, you know, Randy Johnson went there and Mark McGwire, and the list goes on and on about the pros. And actually, Indian Hills has a great track record too. But you wanted to go be one and done and start playing pro ball right away. You knew, Jeff, you were committed to at least 3 years and doing the USC thing, which means competing for College World Series titles. You know, out there, it's a little bit different type of college baseball.
Yeah, I think at the time and still 12 national championships, you know, just unmatched, great history, and that was my goal, was to get to Omaha. And so freshman year I went in there, the first game, and you know, at the end of the day, you're from Iowa, like we discussed, you're facing guys throwing maybe 75 to 80 on average, and now you're out in the Pac-10 at the time. And first game was against UC Santa Barbara. I remember we had a guy named Cesar Gomez. He was the volunteer assistant and threw the best batting practice I've ever seen. I mean, he'd lay it up there, and the wind was blowing out. It was like the ocean breeze, and I had maybe the best BP of my life. The bats were electric back then. It was fun to hit.
We haven't even mentioned how hot the bats were back in the early 2000s.
I know. They were dangerous. So got into the game, and I remember having like 2 or 3 punch outs. So I was terrible that game. And I'm on deck with 2 outs in the top of the 9th, and we got a lead. And I'm thinking, oh, I do not want this last at bat. Well, the guy walks or gets a base hit. So I go up there, get to 2 strikes. I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to punch out again. You know, and you're not supposed to think that way, by the way. And pop it up. Third baseman goes over and catches it, and I got to admit, I was like, thank God I didn't see another pitch. And the dugouts had a chalk line around them, so he was actually in the dugout. The umpire's like, nope, that's in foul territory. So I got another pitch.
What do you mean in foul territory?
So there's a chalk where the dugout is, so the guy didn't catch it from outside the dugout reaching in. He was actually inside the chalk line in the dugout, technically.
This is why the managers go through the ground rules before every game,
that's
right?
the truth, you know. And so anyway, next pitch I punched out, and I'm like, I do not belong here. And then that weekend we play Long Beach State, and Jared Weaver was their Saturday starter. I can't remember. Alvarez was their Friday night guy, a lefty, and back in those days, you get like a foot off the outside corner. I mean, if you hit the spot, it was a strike. And Weaver was the Saturday guy. Jason Vargas, who had a ton of big league time, was the Sunday guy. And I think I went 1 for the weekend. I had a bloop single against Weaver over the shortstop. And I was like, I don't belong here. And then, you know, hit a lot. Next weekend, had a good weekend, and you know, things started going better at that point. But I was really questioning myself at one point in time there.
What was there a certain at bat off a certain pitcher out in the Pac-10 where you're like, okay, if I can get a hit off that guy, you know, I'm here to stay?
Man, I'd have to give that some thought. Typically, those Friday night starters were really good and could really hit spots. And like I said, it was before all these games were televised, where if they were hitting a glove, even if it was on the other batter's box, it was getting called a strike. So, the bats were really juiced, so you could hang out over the plate and kind of yank some of those at times. But the guys that could hit spots were tough.
So, James, Jeff mentioned injuries earlier when we were talking about old man baseball, but I know you came across some injuries too. What's your laundry list of injuries that you went through, and when did it start?
Like the week after I got drafted. So
baseball related or not baseball related?
Yeah. So draft comes out, I get drafted. Scouts coming down, watching me play in the semi-pro summer league here in Des Moines. Actually, I was with the Devils. And
could have been teammates.
Sure enough, the other team, they had a guy come down from University of Iowa. I can't remember who it was, but he was throwing some gas. And I remember there was one up by my eyeballs that I went after, and I remember just trying to hit it. I missed it, of course, and I just kind of fell to the ground, And then I'm like, I go to stand up, but I can't straighten my leg. And so what happened is my foot stayed planted, but my knee twisted and just ripped all the cartilage out, And so it might have been strike 3 or something like, I don't know. But I remember the dugout being like, get up, like thinking that I'm just, being a baby because I struck out or something. It's like, no, I can't walk. So, yeah. And it was kind of that thing like, we're going to fly you out to LA. If your ACL's good, we'll sign. It's like, we will sign you if your ACL's still good.
Oh, you hadn't signed yet?
No.
Oh, boy.
So, yeah, we fly out to LA and they check my ACL, say it's good. So I sign right there on the doctor's table, and Dr. Joe cut some cartilage out of my knee.
So that's what it was, meniscus or cartilage.
Meniscus,
yeah.
So
back in the day, like, it's funny, like the meniscus thing, they would just shave it down and they'd be like, you're good with no meniscus for the rest of your life. Is that what they were kind of doing there?
Because they said if
you have like 20% meniscus in your left knee now.
Yeah, because if they repair it, it's a longer heal time, I think is what the deal is with it. So,
Jeff, you're nodding your head.
Oh, I can relate to everything he just said. I had 2 different knee surgeries where they cut out some lateral meniscus, got back 4 weeks later. I was thrilled. Next time I tore it, they cut more out on the lateral side and then actually repaired the medial side, and that was with the Mariners team doctor. And so, I'm waking up and he's telling me, hey, I got good news. Like, I was able to repair it. And all I could think of was, oh, no, that's a 4-month rehab. So, I'm thinking I'm not going to get back on the field anytime soon.
Sure.
So, but yeah, looking back and knowing what modern medicine has done, it's like, man, you wish they knew then what they know now, to say the least. Yeah,
some of that stem cell stuff now where they're regrowing cartilage and totally changing how we view meniscus and cartilage repair in the knees is just like, I wish they would have had that back in 2002 when I did mine. But
I think even most pitchers probably want Tommy John anymore because you actually come back throwing harder than you did, So.
Yeah, well, and the interesting thing now is the guys that I like following, the guys that have a UCL injury and opt for the platelet, injections to see if they can do that before they're having the full Tommy John operation, which is interesting. And I think that'll continue to develop to a point where that just replaces what we know as Tommy John. And essentially ACL surgeries will be replaced by that. I don't think they're quite there yet, but we're seeing more and more athletes opt for that first as an option because it's a lot shorter recovery and they don't have to take out like another ligament from your body to patch in somewhere else. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But, we sound like old dinosaurs talking about our broken bodies now. But James, as you're playing in the minor league system, you spend 4 years then with the Dodgers, right? You played 3 seasons and then you had an injury year in there as well.
Yeah.
So throughout that time, was it you're battling injuries essentially the whole time, or were you ever to the point where it's like, man, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling healthy, this is the way it's supposed to go?
Yeah, it was injuries all the time,
Yeah.
And it's not like poor me, but that's just what it was. And I remember halfway through one of the seasons, I was like, I can't keep doing this. I'd play 3 games, get hurt, and, something all the time. And so I actually, voluntarily just took like a year and a half off.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And then
You just said, I got to get my body right. I'll come back next season.
Yeah, I left like in May. I was like, I can't play. Left in May. Had like a injury, not baseball related, to my hand, and actually got some pins in it and had a hand surgery. And, it's just one of those things like I missed it, and then it's like, you got to get a real job,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. And so, I called the Dodgers up and was like, is there any way I can get back in it? They said, yeah, you just got to get permission from the commissioner. Emailed him. They emailed me a phone number back. I called it. He told him the story. He's like, I don't care. So it wasn't even like that big a deal. So then Dodgers let me come back in 2007. They don't even invite me to spring training. It's extended spring training they invite me down to.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And I don't play like the first 3 games. So I'm just like, what am I doing down here? And then they let me bat 13th on the 4th game. So, and then I saw 2 pitches, and the second one I hit Oppo left center. So
then
next
they let you hit
day, I
eighth.
was batting 4th. So, yeah, and it's just, I mean, that time off, like I just, I missed it, and I was actually, I felt I wasn't doing baseball, so I think like my body actually could heal, and it took, a year to heal.
Well, I noticed in those stats, I think it was that last year too, they put you on the mound 3 times. Were you like the mop-up guy at the end of some of these Gulf Coast League games? Or?
I remember just razzing our pitching coach. I was like, man, if you guys ever get in a bind, I want to pitch, that kind of thing, as a joke. And then I remember Lance Parrish one time.
Lance Parrish?
Yeah, he was our manager out, and I'm playing right field, and the bullpen's right next to me. And he comes out, and he's kind of like scratching around. Then finally I see him going like, waving out towards where the bullpen is, and I look over at the bullpen. There ain't nobody down there. There's nobody even sitting down there. There's not even a catcher down there. Nobody's down there. So I'm just like, what is going on? And finally he starts yelling, Pete, get in here. So I come in there,
Wait a minute, straight from right field to the
straight
game
from
mound?
right field to the mound, yep. And luckily the pitcher was left-handed, so I said, hey, can I have your glove? Because, I had
this is great.
13-inch glove on there. I wasn't going to pitch with that. Looked like an idiot. So, yeah, he gives me his glove, and, I get this Snyder kid. I get him up to full count, and he just keeps fouling balls straight back. I'm like, man, he's going to hammer one of these, and it's full count, so I can't try, a curveball or anything because I don't know if it works anymore.
Right.
So I'm just throwing gas, and of course it's on the scoreboard, so I want to know how hard I'm throwing. It's like 83. I'm like, oh, come on, man. 83, So, and I'm laying him in there looking back. Every time he fouls him straight back, it's like 86. So it's getting up there a little more,
Yeah.
But, he pops up. I don't know if the coach told the runner to get in a rundown so they could just get out of the inning or what, but there was a rundown, 3rd out. Yeah. So.
And you got out of it.
Yeah.
Did a job.
Then the 2nd inning I pitched, I think I had 2 Ks. Believe it or not. Yeah, I punched out 2 guys.
That's a good story.
The 3rd inning I pitched, I came out after that, and I just got done striking out, called 3rd strike, which I thought was a ball. So I throw a pitch, and he calls it a ball.
Same spot.
And I yell out, you called that a strike on me last inning. So no matter what I threw after that was going to be a ball, and I was done.
You hadn't built up a lot of credibility in your first ever pitching outing to be arguing balls and strikes from the mound, but you gave it a run.
Yeah.
Jeff, what about you? Okay, so you dealt with some injuries, but you had a really good college career, and then some really good minor league years as well. But when did injuries start really taking a toll on you physically and affecting your play on the field?
I signed 05, had my first knee surgery 06. It was like every 2 years I was having a knee surgery or an elbow surgery. So 06, I think, was the year there was a knee and an elbow scope, and then 08, the knee again. 2010, I had microfracture knee surgery, so there was actually cartilage missing, and went out to the Stedman Clinic in Vail, got it done by the specialist. And so my catching career ended pretty quick. I think I caught for 3 or 4 years, and then after the surgeries added up, I ended up being a first baseman. And that was different. I mean, I was used to the ball being thrown to me and hit away from me, and it was the total opposite. But actually, I feel like I did okay defensively, better than what I think. You know, I kind of learned it in Pittsburgh. So got traded to the Pirates, played some first base in AAA. The next year, made the club out of spring training. And I remember the GM, Neil Huntington, basically saying, wow, you were much better defensively than we thought, but you didn't hit nearly as well as we hoped. So it's like, well, that gave me a first-class ticket right back to AAA, and then I just kind of bounced up and down and played part of 12 or got called up late. And other than that, it's pretty much AAA my whole career.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I remember you getting signed by the Twins that last spring training, and I remember thinking, like, all right, finally, Clement's going to get healthy. He's going to come up as a DH for the Twins. I'm a big Twins fan, so I was like, this is it. Finally, we got, we drafted him back in 2002, and now 10 years later, he's going to be up. Was there some excitement for you being an Iowa guy, getting drafted by the Twins originally, maybe having a chance to come back with Minnesota?
Yeah, so I had a decent year in 2012 and then had some opportunities to sign different places in 2013. Chose the Twins because I think that gave me the best chance to make the big league club. As a left-handed hitter off the bench, really. I mean, you had Maurer behind the plate. You had Morneau at first. So I wasn't going to be breaking into any lineup as an everyday starter. Was one of the last guys cut, so went to Rochester and really just did not get off to a good start at all. And then the other guy I was competing for at bats with was like just on fire. I mean, he was getting all the at-bats, and deservedly so. Actually got busted for steroids a couple years after that. So I don't know. I mean, the guy had the most unbelievable year.
Was this Colabello?
It was, yeah. So
Twins fan. And Colabello went from like the Frontier League to AAA with the Twins to hitting 400 for a month.
Yeah, he was hitting balls further to the right as a right-handed hitter than I was pulling them. And I'm like, what's going on here? Now, I mean, credit to him for having a great year. He's International League Player of the Year. So he got called up partway through that year, and then once I started playing more, I started playing better. But yeah, I had like pre-pitch routine at first base. Every time that I got ready for a ball, I thought my knee was just going to fall apart. Now, that at the end of the day, it's like James said, it's like that's an excuse. You either get it done or you don't, and I didn't. And so, looking back, there were some things that I wish I could do over again, but none of us have that, and you learn from it, and you try to move on and be better as a result, and teach your kids not to learn the hard way on a few different lessons here and there.
I remember Chris Colabello swinging. I loved his story, right? Because it was a really great story to follow. It was kind of a shame that he got popped for roids a couple years later, and then the story made a lot more sense. But I remember he swung like a log. He had it looked like he had a huge bat. James, you're a woodworker guy. You make your own wood bats right now. What did you guys swing? Like, what was the size and, length and weight?
33 and a half, 243.
243. What's 243 mean?
Big barrel, skinny handle.
All right. That's a model.
Yeah.
I'm a pitcher. All right.
Okay,
so I have no idea what you're talking about.
I mean, it's not that big a bat either, but I always drop my pinky down too. So, I mean, you could say it's like a 34 since I drop a pinky down off the knob. So,
is that what you still make for yourself? Try to make something similar?
No, I'm down to like it's a Rawlings 460 now. That's my new model that I like. Just smaller barrel, just something for me to
keep it simple. Keep it in the middle.
Yeah, I can't drop my pinky down anymore. It hurts my hand. So I stepped up to a 34. But yeah,
what'd you swing, Jeff?
I couldn't handle the lumber that he was swinging. I was a T141, so it was a little more of a balanced bat. For me, it was always, if I got to err, I'm going to err on the side of something I can get through the zone quicker. I always felt like a 243. If you connect with it, it's going. But I just didn't feel like I could get it through the zone quite as well as the T141.
I swung a 32-ounce bat for most of my career, so there wasn't a lot I could get through the zone. So I feel you. I feel that's one thing we have in common, Jeff. Well, fellas, the way we end every episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is with the 5 big questions, all right? And so we'll go back and forth here. Each of you guys will answer each one of those. James, let's start you off. All time, when you look back on your career, I guess you're still playing in the old man's league, so that could factor in. But who is your all-time favorite teammate?
From any
era, just a favorite ever teammate.
The one I probably still stay in contact with, Jamie Hoffman. So,
yeah. And where'd you play with him?
First year we met. He was from Minnesota, you know, and it's a Midwest thing. You know, you guys you hit it off because you're both from the Midwest, and we were just kind of going through the whole process, you know, at the same time, and moved up, you know, basically at the same time too.
Yeah.
So,
Jeff, how about you?
That's a really good question. A lot of great teammates through the years. Guys that come to mind, Chris Woodward, who actually is the Rangers manager now.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Great guy, great teammate. If this show were 24 hours, I could share some stories. But he was a great one. A guy named Eric Fryer, journeyman catcher. Yep.
He had a cup of coffee with the Twins.
Yes, he did. Yeah, we played together in 2013 in Rochester. He got called up, had a great year. Eric Kratz would be another guy. Yep, just
backup catchers are like my forte.
Oh
here,
man,
so I love those guys.
Just it's hard to kind of just name just a few. Brad Nelson would be another one. I got to play with him in Tacoma, and he gave me my first base glove that I used my whole career.
Wow.
It was by far, I don't know, it said Nelson on it, and it worked way better than the one that said Clement on it. So, no, he's one of the greatest guys, so he would be right up there as well.
Jeff, you're going to take the first one on this one. So second question is, when you look back on your career now, what's one moment when you close your eyes at night that when you think back on your career that reminds you of everything that you love about the game of baseball?
Well, the high school experience is my favorite, you know, and I was fortunate enough to play in the big leagues, you know, which was the dream, but it's impossible to measure the professional feel. You're getting paid to play now, but the stresses are different than high school, where you're showing up with your buddies that you grew up with, and you're all working toward one goal, which is to win a state title. And so I would without question say winning a state title my senior year. But every one of those years, those 4 years, was really special. I mean, my freshman year, the seniors were awesome that year. We had a really good team and got upset by Ames. There are certain things that I definitely remember. We were 4-0 against them that year, and everything that could go wrong went wrong that game. But sophomore year was great group of guys. Made it to state, almost won a state championship. Same my junior year. So just the whole high school experience, I think. But, you know, you can't beat winning a state championship on your home field.
Right. James, what about you?
I think connecting really well with the baseball. You know, just – you know you got it, and you just watch that thing go. So
I love that. I love that answer. It's like the swish in basketball, but it's like, especially with the wooden bat, when you hit something clean with a wooden bat, you're still playing. So did you have that feeling at all last year, or is it like tough to have that feeling off guys throwing 68 miles an hour?
I mean, it's tough, but I mean, we get Trey Cook.
He's pretty good.
He throws hard. Yeah. And I got one against him, and I mean, that it felt good,
right.
The guy's throwing hard. And so Trey struck me out 2 times before that in that game, maybe 3. So, I mean, he throws hard, and it's just one of those things. It doesn't matter if I'm playing with my kids, BP, or we're just hitting a wiffle ball. If I get a hold of one, it just feels good,
I love that answer. That's such a baseball purist answer too. It's like the crack of the bat, the smell of the glove, the dew on the fresh morning grass. All right, James, third question here is, what still nags at you?
My back, knees. I mean,
but is there a game, an at bat, a play that still nags at you?
For me, it's probably, I just wish I would have kind of took better care of my body, ate better, that kind of thing. I just, that wasn't my focus, it was, lifting weights, to get stronger, but there's other things I could have done to took care of myself, I guess, to probably have a longer career.
It's interesting because even back when we played, and I don't know if baseball's still like this. It probably is to some regard, but like the nutritionist stuff, the sleep at night stuff, like all of that is part and parcel with being a professional now. But even back, 10, 15 years ago, there was something to like a badge of honor if you could get drunk the night before and then go out, and get the save or go 2 for 4 and make the play in the field. There was like this badge of like, he's a real gamer, right? If he can go out to 2 in the morning, like this Bull Durham, legend that's still
6-tool player.
And it sounds ridiculous now, but like there was kind of that mindset among baseball guys, and I'm sure it exists at some regard today. But Jeff, what still nags at you?
I think just not getting it done at the highest level. I had success all the way through AAA, and I don't know. I just when you make it there, I think I put extra pressure on myself and just didn't get it done. So probably the mental side, like the story I shared about, being happy to pop out so I wouldn't K.
Right.
I think that those guys that make it at the highest level just are mentally just warriors. I mean, and there's like a belief in their abilities that is beyond reason. They think everybody up there thinks they're better than what they really are. And I think for whatever reason, I couldn't get it done up there, and I put too much pressure on myself and didn't. So that definitely nags at me to have not had a longer career, to say the least.
One thing that you guys are lucky, though, is you both played professional. Like, that's the dream, right? Jeff, you made the majors. James, you played in the Dodgers organization for almost 4 years, which is incredible. So during that time, what was your favorite encounter that you had? Whether it was like with a legend, you meet Ken Griffey Jr., you meet Barry Bonds, or you meet Tommy Lasorda. Even though like you still got to act like a pro when you are a pro, there's a kid inside of us that has maybe that one guy, that you still get giddy about when you meet. Who was that for you, Jeff?
Growing up, Ken Griffey Jr. was my hero. I wore 24 because he did. And then I got to be his teammate in spring training in 2009. So that was cool. And then just to see the way he behaved when he came back to Seattle that year, he really changed the culture. 2008, I think Sports Illustrated picked us to win the World Series. We lost over 100 games that year, so it was miserable. And he shows up the next year, and just him and Mike Sweeney kind of changed the culture there. And, Ken Griffey Jr. is known as the kid. He came up when he was 18, 19 and was a stud, but he was a kid at heart. Like that spring, he was great. I enjoyed being around him. And I guess the other thing would be my first call up in 2007, playing against the Indians who were really good then, and talking with Casey Blake in the outfield of a big league stadium. Unbelievable guy, just like James said. The family is incredible. And just to connect with other Iowa guys, that was pretty special. And he had an incredible career, but was just anybody you ever talked to professionally, they're like, oh, he was the leader in the clubhouse. And you could sense that from him. Just kind of a man among boys, knew how to take the lead, knew how to have fun too, but he just got it. And that was a blast, just connecting with him at Safeco Field in the outfield.
That's really cool. James, what about you?
I'd have to say, in spring training one year, Sandy Koufax came down to kind of watch the games or whatever. And, of course, me being me, I don't care that it's Sandy Koufax. I'm going to go pick up a baseball. I don't care if it's not a pearl or whatever, and I'm going to find a pin. And so I find like this like raggedy BP ball, and I got like this ballpoint pen. It's kind of like, oh, don't bug Sandy, because he usually doesn't come down, or if he does, he's kind of by himself. So I just walk up to him like, hey, man, will you sign this? And, I could just see it like, really, this is the ball. You're going to have me sign.
I'm the greatest left-handed pitcher ever. And
yeah. But what was weird is, I'd see him like interact. People would always just ask him questions and stuff. And, I mean, he just never really talked or said it. Or if he did, it was just one or two words. It was just kind of his presence was just really cool to be around, and he knew it. And I think that's kind of why he was kind of like that too, so.
He is like the embodiment of a living legend.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing that like Bill Russell's still alive and Sandy Koufax, like those are real people that are still alive that you can talk to. Yeah. It's amazing. And like Bob Feller was like that in Iowa for the longest time. So those are really good stories. I'm glad you guys shared those. Final question here, fellas. What's the best advice you've ever received?
I'm gonna have to think about this one.
All right, Jeff, you got anything?
Well, my mom always said, just always be kind, and I think that serves you well in life. And I think from a baseball perspective, play hard and have fun. You don't get to play that long. We're 37, and we got to play a heck of a lot longer than anybody else, but there's a lot of life after baseball. So when you get the chance to put them on, just like James said, like how much he missed it that year and a half, don't take it for granted. Enjoy playing the game. Enjoy your teammates. But the way that you're going to go out there and succeed is to play hard and enjoy it.
Sometimes the simplest advice is always the best, right? James, you've had 40 seconds to think about it.
I think, just mine would be to kind of just be humble, you know? It always seems like, you know, even with like my kids, I'm like, hey, check this out, you know, like showing off or something,
right.
Something bad happens, you know, where if, you know, you're just having fun and you're humble about your life, like that's when things just kind of seem to work out.
Well said, man. Well said. Well, guys, I really appreciate you coming in the Moonlight Graham Show studio tonight and talking about some memories that were, you know, over 20 years old. But the summer of 2002 is a summer that a lot of Iowa high school baseball fans remembered then, had a great time following it then, and still remember today because you guys were like the McGwire and Sosa of Iowa. So thank you so much for being great ambassadors of the game of baseball and for also joining us in the studio tonight. So I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey guys, thanks once again to listening to today's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And even though I do most of the interviews here on the podcast, there is a ton of work that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see that make each episode possible. So I got to give a shout out to the Moonlight Graham Show team. First of all, Brian Sandvig, our producer. Brian does all of the post-production work, and in real life, he's not just a podcast producer, he's also a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home down in the Kansas or Missouri areas, give Brian Sandvig a call. Next guy on that list is Brendan Gargano. Brendan does all of our design and artwork here on the podcast. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and I love all of his work. If you need any help on the design side with logos or anything like that, give Brendan Gargano a call. The next guy on that list is Andy Flattery, my older brother. Andy, of course, has done some of the interviews here on the podcast. He also is a certified financial planner. He owns a business called Simple Wealth Planning. If you need any help in that area, check Andy Flattery out. And then, of course, the trusty co-host Tom Griffin and my younger brother Neil Flattery. Those guys are just busy being husbands, being fathers, they're family men, but also they do a ton of work here on the show. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the Moonlight Graham Show.